Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation on how to upgrade the XAxis wheels and belts on the FoxAlien 4040xe. So one of the most popular updates is in fact replacing the belts with the white steel braided belts and also upgrading the wheels on the linear carriage with some more robust wheels from Amazon. Nothing fancy, just standard 3D printer wheels, but a little bit better quality, a little bit tighter fit than the standard stock wheels. All right, so let's dive into it. We're going to focus on the X-axis in this video. The first step is you want to unscrew the two belt tensioners. So and you're going to take apart pretty much everything. Unscrew the middle piece here and then the outside screw as well. You'll see here I have it disassembled. As I was doing this, I ended up taking apart just one of the belt holders. So I loosened this one a little bit, a couple turns, and I took one screw completely out. This ended up being a good approach. I did this on every one of these across the entire machine when I made this upgrade. So recommend that. Just pull out the belt piece, set it aside, and do that on both sides of the machine. Next, we're going to look at the carriage. Here you'll see I have the more robust spindle holder in place. I've already removed the stock 300 watt spindle from my machine and replaced it with the holder for the more powerful routers. I'm going to be upgrading this to an actual router spindle here in the next couple weeks. But we want to take out 4 screws. These 2 right here, and then the 2 on the other side. Be careful with these. These can strip. They aren't the deepest of sockets, so be careful. Make sure you're straight on when you're unscrewing those. They are a little bit dicey and they're not super long. When you remove those, you will see just the carriage here. You'll be able to set aside that spindle, unplug the cables that go to it, and just set it on the side. We're going to focus our attention on the carriage here today. So we pulled the belt out, nothing special. It should be loose on both ends already, so you can just remove the old black belt. And we want to replace the 4 wheels, so the 2 on top, and there's also 2 on the bottom. Having walked through this, I found it easiest to replace the 2 bottom wheels first. They are a little bit easier to get to. We're going to focus on these 2 screws right here. And I recommend doing one at a time. I found this to be a pretty smooth way of doing this, again, on multiple parts of the machine. Loosen one bolt, you'll get the old black wheel and 2 washers. Set aside the old wheel and put back the new wheel sandwiched between the 2 washers and tighten that up. Really important across this entire machine is to tighten the bolts very tentatively. It's very easy to strip. Everything on here is aluminum, and it's very easy to strip a lot of these screws. That being said, you should have a nice, easy turning screw. You never force anything on any of these. I got to a couple points throughout my update that the screw was a little bit dicey. It did not want to go in right away. I was very careful to back that out and really try and turn it by hand or move it very loosely with the Allen wrench until you're sure that it's got a good fit, and then you can tighten it up. I do recommend having both of these loose while you're doing it, and then I kind of left one still in. I bolted the other one back in and then loosened the second one and repeated the same process for the other side. Once I had those 2 components in, I tightened them up all of the way. You could leave them all a turn loose or 2. It might help you in the next step, but either way, you're probably going to be all right. It looks like I didn't shoot any video of replacing those tops, so I'm going to flip back up here and talk a little bit about those. The top ones took me a little bit of experimentation in loosening these and replacing them. What I found to be the best thing to do is to loosen all 4 of these bolts, at least a turn or 2. So loosen all 4 of these a couple turns. It'll give you a little extra flex in between these rails. Then start with 1 and take it all the way out. Same thing. You're going to have the wheel and 2 washers, slide those out, insert the screw, fit the first washer over it, then fit the wheel on, push the screw through just to the edge of the other wheel, fit the washer in there, slide it in there. If you loosen all of this, you'll have a little bit more room to slide that washer in. And then stick the Allen wrench in this socket and use it to fish around or position or kind of pivot the screw a little bit until you find the perfect spot on the hole for the other side, and then slowly turn that in again. You shouldn't feel any resistance. It should nice and easily slot in when you find the right spot for it. Again, turn it almost completely tight, but probably leave it a turn or two loose. Go to the other side, repeat the same process, replace the wheel, and then slot it back in and tighten it up all the way. You can tighten this one all the way. We're going to go back through, tighten this one all the way. I do always move back and forth, kind of tighten this one just up to that it's snug, go back, snug this one up, tighten this one down, crank it in, and pretty much go as hard as you can go on these two, and then the same on those. And at that point, you want to move the carriage back and forth. Make sure, put your hand underneath here on top. You want to make sure that all these wheels are moving smoothly. And as you're disassembling and reassembling things, it's very good to kind of move it a little bit and make sure those wheels are moving. I had actually a bad wheel in my package of new wheels where one of the wheels was not moving smoothly when I bolted everything back. It turned out to just be a bad bearing. So that does happen. Everything's from China. So just as you assemble it, make sure everything is moving nice and smooth. With this reassembled, you should feel it grip the track really well. On this particular side, I didn't have too much trouble. If you feel a bit of extra wobble, what you may need to do is you can't see it real well in this picture, but I did end up removing the side rails, and oh, that's on the side rail. Never mind, nothing to do. We're in the X-axis still. So just snug this up. I didn't have any trouble. These went on right away. I didn't have to adjust this or anything. All right. Next step is to put in that white GT2 belt. So I got out my GT2 belt and cut myself a nice little length of it. I slotted it in. This one's really nice and easy to get access to. So I started with one of the ends and I just fed it teeth down, I guess, underneath, slid it under the wheel, pushed it over here when it's in the track, grabbed it with a little needle nose pliers and pulled it the rest of the way through. Same thing, going the other way. It helps if you push it down at an angle. So push it down at an angle underneath this wheel and it'll eventually, I didn't have much trouble doing this multiple times on this upgrade. Grab it with the needle nose, pull it, and then you can kind of loop things around the gear as you see here, and then pull it tight. As you pull it tight, you want to have about the same amount of belt on each side as you're tightening it up. So here you can see it's tightening up. Next, let's go to the left-hand side and let's tighten up one of the tensioners. So you're going to slide the belt through the little slot, again, teeth up on that, and then slide the little flange over the top and tighten these down just a little bit while we're getting everything else seated. Bolt the little short bolt in. This is the short bolt right here, and then pull the tensioning bolt, thread that through as well. Again, be careful with these tensioning bolts. These sometimes don't want to thread perfectly, so just be really patient. Turn it with your finger. I snugged these up until they were about 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch loose, maybe 1/4 of an inch. Start there on this first one and tighten it all the way up so there's about 1/4 of an inch space here, and then clamp this one down and tighten this up. You can leave this bolt loose initially, but go ahead and tighten these two down so they're pinching. And then we're going to flip to the other side and do the same thing. So put in the tensioner and bolt down the short screw right here. And then go ahead and attach this tensioning screw. You can see I've got a lot more space here, and I've got the cable threaded through. So here what you want to do is you want to pull on this belt, pull it back this way, and pull it tight with your hand. You don't need to pull it as absolutely as tight as you possibly can. It's not going to matter that much, but you want to pull it fairly tight. And as you're doing that, flip the flange over it, use your hand to put the other screw in, and carefully tighten that down. Again, I would probably move this a little bit closer, probably get that closer to 1/4 of an inch as well before tightening it down. Maybe I left it this far apart. I'm not 100% sure, but somewhere between 1/2 and 1/4 inch. We're going to tighten this a little bit further to get the absolute right tension that we want in this belt. And it's good to have a little bit of slack there as well. If you set these at about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch, you shouldn't have any problems not hitting the end stops on the X. I tested this in mine, and I ended up the 1/4 inch was about the right place to set these, and then I cranked it down. It ended up I cranked one side down almost all the way, and the other side not a whole lot. The whole belt was nice and tight at that point. So again, I tightened one side, grab this belt, pull it over the top here as tight as you can by hand, flip the flange over, tighten these down, and then we're going to screw this belt down to pull some tension into this. You don't, again, want it absolutely as tight as you can possibly go, but if you press your finger down on this belt, it should feel fairly firm. And that's a pretty good place to start with these belts. I think they say, if you press down lightly with your finger, it should depress maybe 3 millimeters or so, I think is kind of the rule that I've always heard on 3D printers. So firm, but not absolutely tight. Doesn't need to be super tight, just firm. All right, so you can see pulling it back and bolting it down. I cut lots of extra slack in here. Here you can see I really tightened that up as well. So I pulled it as tight as I could by hand, and then I cranked it down, which really put the right amount of tension in there. Last step here was to cut off those belts. There's not a lot of room here. The end stop limit switch is going to hit right here. So you want to cut these fairly short, only 3 or 4 teeth, I think, is what I cut it to. And then you're going to test to make sure that it can slide side to side and the end stops hit cleanly. And that's really it. The X-axis was very straightforward to change out. I have already changed out both the Y motors axes with new belts and bearings as well, and I will have a short walkthrough on what is different on those and the best way to go about disassembling those axes as well in a later presentation. But hopefully this gets you started. Very simple to get to this one, a lot easier to access than the other side, but the process is very much the same. On the X-axis, you're going to detach the 6 screws that are on the motor side, and that's going to allow you to get access to the wheels here. It is a little bit trickier. I did end up having to adjust these screws a little bit that can slide up and down to get the carriage snugged up against the rail on both sides. So we'll talk more about that later, and then upcoming is a video on swapping out the router, the stock spindle for the open build router, actually, that has nice variable speed and also can easily change through the different ER11 collets. So excited to share these updates with you. Really liking this machine as I continue to play with it and upgrade it. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you found this helpful.